there. And so one of the things I do have to ask you, Ravinder, is can anybody do this? Because this sounds great. And, in opening up, you said, hey, you show people how to turn everyday spend into like these amazing trips. So can anybody do this?
100%.
Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise, we're gonna be money heroes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nik Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky, we're gonna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nik Johnson, and today we have Ravinder, the Travel Points Rebel. Before we get into our conversation with Ravinder, I would like to ask, if you have not, that you would subscribe on YouTube if you're watching us there. If you're listening to this by way of podcast, that you would follow us on your podcast player of choice. With that being said, a little bit more about Ravinder. Ravinder is a travel educator, content creator, and founder of the Travel Points Rebel, where she teaches Canadian women how to travel in style and live their best lives. Ravinder believes travel is a powerful form of empowerment and freedom, and she inspires women of all ages through travel inspiration and tips to get out there and explore the world in style with confidence by using strategies of turning everyday purchases into luxury adventures. With that being said, let's welcome Ravinder to the show. Hello, Ravinder.
Hello, Nik. Thank you
All
so much
right.
for having me on.
And thank you for joining us. Backstory. Okay, so I always like to share backstories whenever I have a personal relationship with any of our guests. I had the good pleasure of meeting Ravinder 3 years ago. No, is it going to 3 years?
Yeah.
It's going to 3 years ago. I met Ravinder in New Orleans. No,
Yes.
it was New
Atlanta.
Orleans. So no, it wasn't Atlanta.
Okay,
It,
sorry, New
it
Orleans.
was New Orleans, Atlanta. Yeah, it was New Orleans. Okay. And so I was fortunate enough to get included in a lunch with some other individuals. They brought me into their awesome world, and I have been fortunate enough to know those individuals, including Ravinder, for some time. So thank you. Ravinder keeps me honest, as she is one of my accountability buddies and holds my feet to the fire when I say I'm actually going to get something done. So you have to have those people in your life. My wife is my primary accountability partner, but outside of that, Ravinder and the other folks keep me in line. So that's how I got to know Ravinder. And Ravinder has a very interesting niche, and that is utilizing points for travel. And so individuals may hear about travel hacking, and there are a lot of different components within travel hacking. You could pet sit, you can do all kinds of things. But one of the great things within travel hacking is points hacking. Okay, so there is an area where individuals are leveraging points to be able to take amazing trips, and this is what Ravinder specializes in. So we're going to ask her to share some of that insight with us so that we can apply those things to our lives so we can turn that everyday spend into luxurious adventures. So first of all, I got to ask Ravinder, how and when did you start leveraging points for travel?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks again, Nik, for having me on. Before I start and before I answer your question,
All
I
right,
also have to add one more title to our relationship.
I'm ready.
I'm the fashion police between you and me.
You are the fashion police. Okay, so this is what I will say. If you go back and you look at probably like the second episode, yeah, probably if you go back and look at the mindset video that I did with Matt from Coast Five Couple, you'll see I had a shirt on there. And Ravinder gave me her perspective, I will say, on the shirt that I had on. I thought, everybody liked Beavis and Butthead. Apparently it's a very, unique taste of some individuals. So she just gave me something. So from that point on, she always makes sure that, whenever I'm in her presence that, I dress up to my potential. Is that a fair statement there, Ravinder?
Exactly, exactly. And I'm sure us grown women, and we're both grown people,
Yes.
I think people would appreciate you always got to dress for the environment you want to be in. So
Yes.
if Beavis and Butthead is your jam, that's cool. But I, I just got to represent for us, a bit more fashionable ladies to say that.
I will. So what I will do, I will slice in a picture. I'm pretty sure I have a picture the last time we got together in Portland, where I intentionally tried to get myself right so that you would approve. So I'll make sure to add that picture in there. So yes,
Yeah.
well, yes, you are also the fashion police when it comes to me. So thank you for level setting on that, ma'am. And by the way,
And I know it's
She
always
gets mad
been.
when I say ma'am, so I'm gonna try not to say ma'am. So there you go.
See that I get that. That's a southern thing that it's very respectful. But
Mhm.
here I'm up in Canada, and I don't get to hear "ma'am" a lot. And usually when people hear "ma'am," that means that you're old lady. So
You're not old lady, so yeah, that is a southern thing. So you got me honest on that one.
so some mutual respect for both of us. But anyways, yeah. So you were asking me about how I got started into points.
Mhm.
And actually, it was a milestone birthday that I
Mhm.
had. We won't tell everyone how old I am just
Okay.
quite yet, but it was a milestone birthday for me. And I had always been, like many people, just working the 9 to 5, had limited vacation. And I decided for this birthday, I wanted to do something different. I've been pretty much an introvert, and I'm like always felt like if I wanted to travel, it would be the typical places and I would have to travel with people. So I wanted to totally come outside of my box to do something different. And what I did was go on my first solo travel. And I decided because it was a pretty big trip that I wanted to plan, that I also wanted to do it in style.
Mhm.
So I took my opportunity at that time to learn a little bit about points. I didn't know very much about it. I collected points here and there in different programs, things that that are common to our different areas, but I really had no good understanding of what it meant to be traveling on points.
Mhm.
Needless to say, I did a bit of research. I looked up, different blogs and information on the internet, and I managed to piece together my first trip on points. And what I was most excited about was that I was able to go in business class. And in
Mhm.
fact, I went on my first points trip on my first business class flight on the best business class in the world, which is on Qatar Airways in the Q Suites. And
Okay.
I got to travel from New York to Doha, Qatar. And then I traveled on to Milan, Italy after that.
Okay.
Needless to say, the trip that particular trip was absolutely incredible. The experience was like no other that I've ever been on before.
Mhm.
And if you've ever had an opportunity to travel overseas in business class, and particularly on the Q Suites in Qatar Airways, it's it's an experience like no other. And once you get a taste of traveling in that way,
Mhm.
you'll never want to go back. But all that to say is that I had an incredible experience. I got to do it on points. I didn't do it well on points, but I did
Mhm.
get to do it on points. Learning about points is a definitely a has comes with a learning curve,
Mhm.
but I'm so excited that I actually got that experience and I've learned lots about it since. But now I'm on this mission to show people that you don't have to wait so long, and everyone has the opportunity to travel on points and in business class if that's what they choose.
Okay.
And my biggest wish was that I got to do it earlier in life, but hence we can never go back. We can only go forward. So
Right.
I'm here to show people how to do it.
Yeah, I got you. Well, you in that response you shared about Q Suites. Now I've heard about Q Suites. I've never been in a Q Suite before, and I know you said that was the best. So what makes Q Suites the best, Ravinder?
So like I said, I had never traveled business class before. I just thought business class meant being in a wider seat at the front of the plane.
Okay.
But this takes it to a completely different level. If you go in particular in the Q suites, what they're known for is a 1-2-1 configuration. So there's every single seat is an individual pod. But what's really unique is that every each pod has a sliding door, so you get the privacy, so you can, you know, not have to deal with the traffic in the cabin if you don't want to. All of the seats are lie flat, complete lie flat beds. You get dining from the minute you walk on to the moment you leave. But particular in the Q Suites that is of particular interest, especially for people if they're traveling in a group or as a couple or with two people, is that the two middle seats that are on the aisle actually will turn into a double bed. So,
Oh, wow.
if you
Okay.
want to, be with your boo and you want to be in the double bed, you could definitely do that. And then if
Okay.
you're with a family, if you take the two seats and the two seats behind you, you can actually turn that into a dining experience because
Mm,
the chairs will turn around and you can have an actual dining room in the air while
mm,
you're enjoying dinner. So
wow.
and this is a lot more. There's a lot more other things like you get your personalized pajama or sorry, you get your own pajamas, you get the slippers. It's just a completely different experience than anything that I've ever
Okay.
experienced before.
So it was safe to say that once you were bit by the bug, you were smitten to
This is true. This
hit
is
it up.
true.
Well, that sounds great. So I guess, and I want to just for context, you are in Canada. I'm in the U.S. And
Yes.
so a little bit later on, I kind of ask you if there are some differences there, but I just kind of love said there. And so one of the things I do have to ask you, Ravinder, is can anybody do this? Because this sounds great. And in opening up, you said, hey, you show people how to turn everyday spend in like these amazing trips. So can anybody do this?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
I will say that, I will preface a couple of things is that getting into the market of traveling on points comes with the responsibility of good finance. So,
Okay.
obviously, we need to preface that first. Credit card points travel points come usually most easily through travel points that you get through credit cards. And, the golden rule with credit cards, and I'm sure you say this a lot already, but is you need to be in a position that you're financially stable to be able to pay your credit card off 100% in full.
Mhm.
That is definitely the caveat when it comes to traveling on points. And if you are in that position where you can pay off your credit card in full every month, this is absolutely something that I believe everyone should be doing because we are already in positions where we're having to do everyday spending, whether it's our groceries, our gas, traveling, everything that we are required to do in life, even pay our rent. Those
Mm.
are all opportunities to be gaining points. And yes, we talked a little bit about the nuance between yourself in the States and I'm in Canada, but the concept of collecting points with credit cards is a universal topic. Obviously, our landscapes are a little bit different, and actually, in the states, the landscape is much more fruitful than it is in the state or than in Canada.
Mm.
But definitely, anyone who's in a position of good finance should be taking advantage of things like this.
Okay. And so I know that one of the, I guess, the requirements someone would need to have, definitely as far as being able to pay off, your credit cards in full every month. We don't want to total any balances because what happens is that to be able to provide these very robust sign up bonuses and is because it has to come somewhere. So it's a lot of times they're high interest cards. And so what happens is those individuals who tote those balances pay that high interest for those individuals to be able to use the points and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we're paying all it off. So that's a great point. But also we have to actually be approved for cars, correct? Because you can apply for all the cars you want to, but if your credit is in the situation where you actually get approved, um, it's not going to happen. So we want to make sure that we have our credit is in good standing, but also that we're able to also be able to pay that off in full at the end of the statement. So, yes, ma'am. So with that being said, you kind of did make reference to Canada and the US. And so you say that things are a little bit more favorable for us down here in the States than it is for you up there. And so I know one of the big cars that individuals like down here in the States is like, it's like Chase. And then there's like Capital One. Do you have access for like those type of cars up there?
So, as a Canadian, we do have the ability to access American cards, but it's not a something that I recommend, for example, for Canadians to do until they are well versed, obviously, in the Canadian landscape first. What
Mhm.
it basically requires you to do is to do some paperwork with the U.S. government and stuff to get you the ability to get credit in the states. Because
Oh,
to your
wow.
point earlier, is that you can have access to American credit cards, but you need to have access to American credit. And a lot of people who are well nuanced on the Canadian landscape eventually move on to the next level of accessing American credit cards because there are a plethora of different credit cards, including the Chase and Capital One, which are big ones in the states, and they're very lucrative when it comes to points.
Okay, so I've never thought about this before. So I know down here, we have, the FICO scores and all that other stuff. So I'm assuming that you all don't have FICO up there, right? You have like kind of your own kind of credit bureau or scoring model. Is that correct?
Yes, we do have our own credit scoring. We don't use the FICO model. We do have credit scores. I'm actually not quite even sure what in the states what the range of the credit score is, but
Hmm.
for us in Canada, it's around 800, 850 is sort of the highest credit score that you can get.
Hmm.
And if you want to pursue, the type of credit cards that you can get lots of access to different credit cards, you want to be in good standing between 600, 650, if not more. And, people can always build their ability to get up to those type of credit scores. But yes, we do have credit scores, but it just uses a slightly different system.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. So as far as redemptions, and so
Mhm.
everything's a little bit different. A little bit later on, I'll share probably, at least up to this point, what's been my best use of points last year when I went over to Spain. So I'll share that. But as far as with you, since you are a black belt when it comes to this, I'd be interested in knowing what do you consider to be like the best redemption that you've had so far, as far as being able to find, where there's a great flight or just kind of a great excursion. What was the best redemption so far you feel like you've gotten?
Yeah. I think what I would probably do is preface it
Okay.
first by saying that not all points are created equal.
Okay, not created equal. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, a 1 point system in, for example, with one credit card versus a point system through a store loyalty card versus a point system through, another credit card. They all hold different value. So the thing is that you want to be able to understand the point system that you're trying to work within. Obviously, for the purposes of travel, I look to collect only travel points or adjacent points that I can be using specifically for travel.
Mhm.
So there's lots of different, for example, loyalty programs within stores and gas stations and, any retailer you probably go to or, through your bank. But all that to say is that if your goal is to travel then and on points, then you want to be looking at points programs that are specifically that are going to give you the ability to do traveling, because not
Mhm.
all points will give you the ability to travel, because lots of
Mhm.
people will get points that will give you statement credits, or you can buy gift cards, or you
Mhm.
can get a discount through an online store or whatever. So you first have to understand which points program you're interested in.
Mm.
All that to say is that once you do define the type of program that you want and you have the ability to travel with it, I've gone on some incredible trips being able to maximize the amount of points that I can use for the furthest amount of travel. My general rule is that you're going to get the best value for your points by going in doing overseas travel,
Mm.
and also by being able to be as flexible as you can. That being with, location, like if you want to go a general continent versus a specific city, and also being flexible on the dates and the times that you go, that allows you to open up the possibility of going to different places and really maximizing the value of the points that you're using. So an example is a really bad redemption that I mentioned to you before was my first trip on points was
Mhm.
I paid at that time 183,000 points, American Express points that I redeemed for my trip from New York to Qatar to Italy.
Mhm.
Now, knowing what I know now, that was absolutely horrible redemption because a lot of people would be able to get at a much better rate for redemption. So, for example, I am going to be going to Qatar again this year, and for that same flight, I'm going to be flying from Montreal to Qatar, and I'm only spending 70,000 points.
Oh,
So
wow.
huge it's a huge difference. So
Mhm.
that comes with the learning, and once you understand how points work, it's an incredible way to travel because you can just use that sort of those everyday transactions that you're doing within your life to consistently collect those points so you can travel in that way.
Mm. Yeah, first of all, like I said, extend yourself grace because when we know better, we do better. So you
This
definitely
is
you,
true.
you know better now. But the thing is that you may reference to all points are not created equal. That is a great point. I guess no pun intended, but it was a great point. As far as I remember having a credit card at one point, and it was and I would it was through a credit card, and I would go and I look, but these points I could use like gift cards. So I'm like, okay, it was okay, but I could not take them and convert them over to tickets or hotel stays and things like that. Now, granted, could I have taken those points and maybe got like a gift card and then try to take that gift card? Yeah, it was a lot of friction. And then, you're going to actually lose some value as you kind of keep converting and doing things like that. So that's a great point as far as all points not being created equal. And when you make reference to flexibility, it's extremely important because I know right now, many of the trips that we try to take, since we still have school age kids, we don't have as much flexibility as we like. We have flexibility during the summer. So, we got those, 2.5 months there. But other than like spring break and things like that, we don't really have a whole lot of flexibility as far as we want to go on these long trips. So flexibility is extremely important because when you have that flexibility, you can literally just go look at a points calendar and see, okay, when is the best time to take a flight? You can just go because you have that flexibility to be able to do that. So that's extremely important. And when we talk about flexibility, are there any particular tools that you use to navigate as far as how much a particular trip is going to cost when it comes to points, Ravinder?
So it depends on the airline that you're wanting to travel with. And
Mhm.
so, for example, obviously in Canada, the biggest airline program that we have is Air Canada.
Okay.
And so Air Canada on their website actually provides airline points rewards charts, and it'll
Mhm.
give you a estimate on your how many points you'll need required for any particular trip. Now,
Mhm.
points values are usually based on the distance of your trip and if you're going from one continent to another and in what class of service that you're doing. For example, if you're
Mhm.
going through economy or business, so there's lots of different factors that will sort of give you an estimate in terms of the amount of points that you're going to require to get onto a flight. The other thing is that some airline programs work on a fixed model in terms of how many points they're going to be charging. So, for example, you might have a credit card that utilizes their own travel portal, and they'll
Mhm.
allow you to take a trip, say, from one state to your neighboring state or from one province to the neighboring province for a fixed value amount.
Mhm.
So those are fixed redemption rates. But as you get more advanced in travel points, you'll understand that there can obviously be a range too, right? It's just like airline prices and prices for flights are flexible, like depending on the time of year you want to go. The cash value of a price for a flight varies a lot, right? Depending on location, dates, timing. The same thing happens with um, airline points too, and people who
Mm.
want to redeem flights with points. So that's based on a dynamic pricing model. So, one day you could be paying X amount, but then you could be paying double the amount because seats are only released at a certain time of year based on when the flight's going, and also seat availability for particularly points flights is not as much as obviously if you're going to be paying cash. So there's lots of different tools. Again, just getting sort of focused on the type of program that you want to be working with it will give you the ability to find out how best to redeem those points.
I got you. Well, I know that one of the things that I've done as far as when I went on my trip last summer is that, I've always used points to some extent, but I was like, I'm going deep. I'm trying to do the best I can. So one of the things that I did here was that one of the things that what happens sometimes, at least like with Chase and Capital One, is that they allow sometimes transfer bonuses to like their to certain airlines. And so it just so happens that I was able to do a transfer from um, Chase to Virgin because we were going to, so the kind of layout of our trip was that we were flying from Orlando to London, and then we were going to stay there for a few days, take a train from London to Paris, stay there for a few days, train to Spain, Barcelona, stay there for a few days, and then we took a transatlantic cruise back. And so I was like, okay, how can I try to leverage, these points as much as possible? And it just so happens that they had a 40% transfer bonus from Chase to Virgin. So I was like, okay, I timed it just right. And so I was able to go, and I don't know how this was possible. It was possible, but literally they had one-way tickets from Orlando to Heathrow for 12,500 points,
Nice.
and it was four of us. And so with the transfer bonus, I think I only had to transfer like 39,000 points, something like that. Now, granted, I had to pay like a $650 fee, but I was like, you know what? In the scheme of things, it was great because a ticket over there, I think, was like $1,000 by itself. So the points definitely allowed me to do that. And so I was very proud of that. I couldn't necessarily figure out a way to use points on a cruise, even though I know of some individuals who've kind of done some creative things, but I couldn't figure that out. But all in all, I was pretty proud of that. So our next thing that we're working on right now for this summer is actually Japan. So we're
Mhm.
working on trying to get a trip to Japan. Not quite as easy as like the flight from here to London. I figured out a couple ways of trying to leverage a couple of different strategies. Right now, round trip ticket I found to be 85,000 points from Florida to Tokyo and back. So that's kind of the lowest I've got. And so I've done that with a bulk of transfer bonuses and things like that. And I am using, in complete transparency, I am using two-player mode. So I am using my wife to do some points as well around that, some of that mandatory spend that we have. We're not doing anything extra. Here it's time for us to pay for our property insurance, and so don't we don't escrow it. I don't know what they call it up in Canada, but we don't escrow it, so we have to pay it out of our pocket. And so we just pay it using our credit cards, and then we just pay it off, and that meets a lot of our minimum spend there. So I will let you know how that goes, and I will definitely run my approach past you to see if it gets the Ravinder seal of approval. So I'll definitely do that. And so let's talk about when it comes to points. What are some of the big mistakes that you see people make often when using points? I know one of the things you just kind of share is that individuals don't want to consider all points as being equal, but are there any other things that you could think of that mistakes people made when they're first kind of getting into this points traveling game?
Yeah, I think like trying to be everything everywhere in all the different points programs is probably I would consider a big mistake, especially if you're just getting started, because if you are collecting points just for the sake of collecting points and don't really have a goal
Mm,
to what you're going to do with those points, then you can be collecting points and then find out later that it has really no value towards the goal that you had. So
mhm,
that's always the first thing that I would suggest is that like learn about I always talk about, know what your vision is, know what your goal is. If you're going on your first points trip, figure out where you're going, and try to work backwards from there. So if you're planning a trip, for example, you brought up Orlando and your family wants to go to Japan, you have an understanding of where you want to get to. So learn about the programs that will allow you to get the type of points that you need to get on that type of flight,
Mhm.
versus just collecting a bunch of points, through Delta or United or Virgin or whatever, right? Like if you have all these points but you can't actually put them towards the actual goal that you have, then it really negates the point of
Mhm.
even doing that. Also, yeah, so just again, to focus on one trip at a time, figure out the trip that you want, the type of points that you need to get on to the flight that you want, and then really hone in on that particular program and learning about that program, how you can maximize your earning potential in that system. So, for example, points aren't just collected by using your credit card at a store. You can also get accelerated points, depending on the type of credit card that you have. You can have credit cards that give you accelerated points if you're spending in a certain category,
Mhm.
say for example for groceries or for gas or things like that. So using the type of cards that are going to accelerate your ability to gain more points from the same transaction that you would have done anyways.
Mhm.
The other thing too is that there's always opportunities. Again, in the States, there's a lot more opportunities like this, but you alluded to the fact that there's ways to collect credit card points through traditionally things that you can't get points for. For example,
Mhm.
paying for your rent. You talk about your property taxes, things that you traditionally can't pay a credit card for. You can use sort of these third-party payers that allow you to pay by credit card. I
Mhm.
think in the States, Built is a
Yeah,
one that
built.
a lot of
Yeah.
people use.
Mhm.
That alone, if you use Built to collect points for your rent, um, when you're paying for your rent, you're going to collect points. So you're paying that rent anyways. You're going to pay a nominal fee to use that service, but because of that, you're just gaining points on the spend that you have to do anyway. So being able
Mhm.
to do that. And then finally, the other thing that I think that a lot of mistakes, a lot of people make this mistake, is that thinking that points is not a currency. Like with
Mhm.
any currency, points points devalue mostly,
Mhm.
but they carry different values. So something that's going to cost you, say for example, 60,000 points to purchase today and within 6 months, could cost 100,000 points a year from now. So the whole concept of get the points as fast as you can and then actually use them, because
Mhm.
just hanging on to the points for the sake of hanging on to them, there's no guarantee that what you think the points redemption required for that particular trip is going to remain the same, because as with any organization and any company, rules change all the time. So you want to take advantage of using the points for the maximum value when you can, and just going through that sort of earn and burn cycle, right? Like
Mhm.
gaining the points, using them, gaining them, using them. And when you have that sort of fluid motion of doing that, then you never have to worry about, your points either expiring because you're not using them, or they're getting devalued.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there, Ravinder. You talk about accelerating certain categories. I know there is now, granted, it's a little, mental gymnastics that you have to do to try to remember which card you need to use for whatever thing it is. But it can definitely be beneficial. Like, for instance, if you have a particular credit card, they give you, a larger um, ability to make points if you use it for gas. I know when I'm out on a Friday or a Saturday night, if I'm going out to dinner, Citibank has this thing called City Nights. And so
Mm.
whenever you dine on Friday night or Saturday night, they give you like 6 time points on like what you spend, which is like pretty awesome. So anytime I do it, I'm like, hey, I was like, we're going out. It's a city night on a Friday and Saturday night. So we do that. And also the devaluing that you made reference to. Points programs always change, and something, a trip that could have been 20,000 points, like you said, this month might be 50,000 in 3 months. So you just never know. So you definitely want to get there once you get those points and try to lock it in when you can. Because I don't think I can ever think of there's been a situation where a points program got less restrictive, where all
Right.
of a sudden you're able to like actually get more from your points. So definitely, as you say, earn and burn is definitely a good motto because you're not really accruing. It's not like you're earning interest on these points by them sitting somewhere, and they're truly being devalued. So definitely once you get it, identify what you want to use it for, then go and use it. So that's great.
Yeah, and
So
then go all in on that program, right? If you know you need a certain type of points, then direct all your spending or direct everything that you're doing to gain those type of points. Then the ability or the need to collect points in other programs becomes mute because you
yeah,
should then be just focusing on that one program.
yeah, that is true. So one of the things, and this is my this is my challenge. I know for a fact. It's the dismount. What do I mean by the dismount, Ravinder? How do you navigate annual fees on credit cards? Now, I'm assuming that now, and this is also based on an assumption. I'm assuming that there are annual fees on cards in Canada. Okay.
Yes.
So how do you navigate those? Because typically the annual fees are front loaded on the card, so you pay it when you get it. But then you do the necessary spend, the minimum spend to get the bonus or whatever. And say, for instance, you say, you know what, this card was only good for a season. I only really got it because it had like an awesome sign up bonus. So how do you handle the end of that first year when it comes to those cards?
Yeah. So to your point, yes, there's lots of different credit cards that offer incentives for you to collect that credit card, right? And
Mhm.
so I put those type of credit cards I put credit cards basically into two different categories. One is for the ability to collect the welcome bonus that they are going to give you these huge incentives to get their credit card. But also with annual fees, just like there are annual fees for credit cards, there's lots of credit cards out there that don't have any fees either. So the reason that annual fees are charged is because they're trying to provide you a service. And what we've been talking about a lot is about getting the welcome bonuses and things like that, the ability to collect a certain type of point. But the other thing that annual fees also provide is the ability to have lots of different perks for holding that card. And
Mhm.
everything can be, there can be things from insurance benefits, different credits that you can get through handling that card. You can be getting free checked bags if you have like an airline type of card, lounge access, different types of reasons why you would want to hold on to that credit card. So there's credit cards that you get for the reason of just I want to get that upfront sort of bonus, and then you figure that you don't want to keep that card past the first year. And then there's these other types of cards that I call keeper cards, and they're ones that they may come with a annual fee, and sometimes it's a high annual fee, but the benefits of holding that card are worth more than what you pay in the annual fee. So yes, you do get a welcome bonus for having that card in that first year, but the continued benefits and perks that you get from having that card goes beyond the welcome bonus. And so
Yeah.
that is a reason why I would continue to carry that card. So aside from those type of keeper cards that I have, a stack of ones that I've had for many years, and some of them have high annual fees, and I will continue to keep them regardless of the annual fee because it presents more value for me than I am paying in annual fees. There are those other cards that people are collecting just simply for collecting those welcome bonus points, and so you go through that same sort of analysis where you need to decide at the end of the year, is it worth it for me to keep that credit card? So that's when you sort of have to figure out, am I just getting that card for the sake of getting the points at the beginning, or is there some other value that I can be getting from that card? So is it providing me some sort of accelerated points category for earning? Is it providing me some sort of other benefits or offers for collecting that and keeping that card? If you decide that you don't want to keep the card past the welcome bonus and past that first year, the one thing that I do recommend, and I give a tip to all your listeners, is that if you've made a decision that you don't want to keep that credit card, don't cancel that credit card as soon as you've gotten the benefit out of that card. For example, if you've gotten a credit card just for the sake of getting a welcome bonus, say you've collected your welcome bonus within, say, 3 months of opening that credit card, do not make the mistake of closing that card in the fourth month.
Hmm.
Just saying, oh, I don't want that credit card anymore. Because obviously, credit card companies know, the whole point of offering you these incentives is that they want you to retain these cards and hopefully keep them year after year. But if there is a pattern of where people are opening and closing credit cards, A, it's not good for your credit score. And B, it's also something that credit card companies are very attuned to, and it does not reflect well on someone who's constantly opening and closing cards just for the sake of collecting points.
Mm.
So, go through that analysis to decide if you want to keep a credit card past the first year, and if you do make the decision that you don't want to keep the card after the first year, wait um, as close as you can to the end of the term of that credit card. Don't
Mm.
do it, you know, early into the term of that credit card, because
Mm.
it will flag you as someone who's sort of churning, and you don't want to have that reflection on your credit score, because it'll affect your ability to get credit cards in the future.
Mm. Right. Thank you for that. I know one of the things that I do is that when I get a card, one of the best tools I use is a calendar reminder. And literally, I
Mhm.
get it and I'm like, okay, well, what's up 11 months out? And so I go ahead and I have that because if not, I'll miss it, especially if it's a card that I got for a particular purpose. It's not like I'm looking at that card a whole lot. I'm not using it anymore. So it can be literally 6 months and I have not touched that card. And so
Yeah.
you definitely want to just do something like set up reminders to do that. And as you say, I like the keeper card concept because I have certain cards that I have kept because I've ran the numbers and the annual fee is outweighed by the benefits that I get from it. So I
Correct.
have this one credit card. It's an iSheet credit card. It's not a fancy card at all. I originally got it when I first started trying to learn about using credit card points and travel points. And I think they offered, I don't know, maybe like 5 days for like a couple $1,000 spend. So I did it. And so I kept the card. And the reason why I keep the card is that there's a $45 a year fee, but I get a reward night every year. So I'm like, I can't get a reward night for $45. I can't get
Yeah.
a hotel night for $45. So I just keep it. But then there's like another card. I have a Capital One card. The Capital One card gives me it's like a little bit more, $395, but I get $300 worth of spend in the portal. Now, some other people will say, I don't know if it's worth it, but I get $300 worth of spend in the portal. I get 10,000 points every year, but it also comes with priority pass. So I get lounge access. So I'm like, okay, that's a win for me because I like when I am traveling, I like being able to go to lounges. So you just really want to, as you said, look at the benefits from the card. If you feel as though the annual fee is less than the actual benefit that you get from it, you definitely want to go ahead and keep those cards if you can. So
Yeah.
that's definitely it.
And then one thing I will say to that too is that, what I value versus what you value are two completely different
Hmm.
things, right? So it's really important that you take a look at your own personal situation, and if it's of value to you, and that includes the redemption of a flight. For me, I have now chosen to fly overseas in business class at any time that I can. But for other people, maybe people, families with small children, their whole thing is not to fly in business class, but just to get 4 economy seats, because
Hmm.
they have now not have to pay for that. So I take the whole conversation of points with a grain of salt, in that, like, your situation and my situation can be completely different, right? So as long as it's of value to you personally, you don't need to worry about what other people say. And the other thing that I just wanted to also mention too was about, when you are making the choice to not keep a card, there are opportunities. Again, in the States, this is more lucrative, but if you are sort of on the fence about whether or not you want to keep a card or not past the first year, it can be simply just giving the credit card company a call and sort of, letting them know that, you're considering canceling it. And sometimes that conversation will turn into the company offering you sort of either another welcome bonus or a retention offer bonus, where they will entice you enough to keep the card past the first year. So there's no harm in, having that conversation, whether it's through the credit card portal or the chat, or simply giving them a call. Because if you are on the fence, if they give you a sweet enough offer for you to keep it a second year, then why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great idea. I know that it's getting around that time for me on a couple of credit cards that I have. I have to reach out and call someone about them to see what I'm going to do. So definitely want to do that. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you here for this conversation with Vendor is that many individuals, as they start to think about early retirement or have already retired, they say, okay, well, I want to travel, but if I don't have a job, how can I optimize around being able to travel as cost effectively as possible? One of the biggest things that you can do is to use points for travel, because you now have a lot of flexibility because you're not working traditional hours. So it allows you to be able to go around and do a lot of things so you can really get the most bang for your buck when it comes to traveling with points. So I know that there is a lot of nuance to traveling with points. There's a lot of best practices and things like that. So we can't all squeeze it in here, but definitely I know that you, and I see a lot of the content that you put out, Ravinder, for those who are listening or watching who want to connect and kind of follow some of the tips and strategies that you're putting out there around points, what's the best way for them to follow you?
Yeah, so I am not a social media queen in that I am not on all the different channels, but my
Mhm.
main channel is on Instagram. So I'd love for you to come check it out at the Travel Points Rebel.
Okay, that is the Travel Points Rebel. That's points with an S. And also, we want to let you know that Ravinder takes these great trips and she documents them out there on Instagram. So definitely want to go out there and follow her. And so, with that being said, I want to thank you, Ravinder, for your time here. It's been very informational on how individuals, if they have the appropriate discipline, they can leverage points to get trips that they may have never thought they would be able to afford. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge around that. I'm going to get ready to sign off here, but as always, I want to ask you, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, that you would do so. Also, that if you are listening to us on podcast platform, that you will follow us there. And as always, I am Nik Johnson, and I'm going to remind you to trust the process. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you.